Welcome to the Meetings Podcast, the meeting organizer's podcast source for what's new in the meetings and events industry. Meetings Podcast is a conversation with a variety of voices that looks at events, meetings, and media. Meetings Podcast is sponsored by IMEX America, America's worldwide exhibition for incentive travel, meetings, and events.
Welcome back to the Meetings Podcast. This is Mike McCowan with Grass Shack Events and Media. And today, I am a big fan of our guest. I'm not a kind of a stalker type fan, but I am a fan of her work. I think our audience can also learn a lot from her and her yearly failures. Welcome to the show, Cassandra Phillips.
Hey.
You are with, Web Wallflower Events. I think I need a sip of coffee because my mouth is dry all of a sudden from our laughing before we started this. Okay. So, Cass, do you like to be called Cass or Cassandra?
I generally go by Cass.
Okay. So, Cass, let me read a little bio about you to get us started. Cass has been a startup event producer for over 5 years, producing and managing conferences like SF Music Tech Summit, Inside Social Apps, and the Unleashed Conference. She works with clients to ensure each has a high quality and profitable event, connecting them with the best partners, sponsors, and speakers for their topics. However, she is best known for the unique conference she started in 2009 called FailCon. The event has been produced in almost a dozen cities around the world, with many more in the works, and focuses 100% on the failures we are likely to encounter in our business lives. I first heard about Cass and her work years ago from a friend of a friend named Christian, and I had lunch with him, and he said I had to meet this awesome event producer who put on tech events with him in San Francisco. I finally met you, Cass, at one of your events, FailCon, which I attended, and it was a really great event, and I always wanted to get you on the podcast, and when I first asked you, you said, no, I don't have time.
Did I really?
It was during the event, and you were in full on mode, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was kind of bad timing to ask you."
Okay. I'm glad I had a good reason.
But I thought it was funny, and then the next time I asked you, you were like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." So anyway, I know how that goes. You got the head in the game. There's no getting out. Anyway, so tell me. Let's stop hearing me talk, and let's hear about your story and how you got into event planning.
Sure. So it is a little bit of a convoluted story, but I tend to think that that's where a lot of event planners come from and should come from. I actually went to college at the University of Chicago, and there I studied human development, which is a little like anthropology, as well as theater management. So doing a lot of stage management, along with a little bit of acting and design. I moved out to San Francisco in 2006. Actually to take up a stage management position. So it's a little like doing events where you're working with the team of actors and designers and making sure the whole show runs smoothly. I loved the feeling of control that gave me. I love the teamwork and the camaraderie. But theater is probably one of the lowest paying jobs out there for kind of a growing professional. And so after a couple of years, I realized I just didn't like that lifestyle of the late night hours and the long hours.
Right.
And at that time, Christian, who you mentioned, was just starting up his events. He'd been doing SF Beta for about a year or two, and wanted to start doing a series of conferences. But he knew that his weakness was in management, that he was a great kind of big thinker, look at the big picture, and great at networking, but didn't know how to get all the pieces together. And so he knew I wasn't thrilled about my theater work and looped me into those events. So he and I worked together for about 2 years. He moved to Boston, and we've since stayed friends, but it didn't make sense for us to stay business partners. So he took SF Beta with him, and I took an event that we had just been starting to think about producing, FailCon, and decided to produce that on my own. In that time, just to kind of keep finances coming in, I also did, as you mentioned, event management for a number of other great startup events in the city. So that is something I focus only on startup events. I only do events that reach young entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial community, and discuss those sort of topics. FailCon then started in 2009, and it came from my actually working on my own startup that did end up failing. But realizing that while working on a startup, I would attend even my own events and be a little bored by them. Listening to someone speak on their entrepreneurial successes can be very inspiring, but there's little that you can take from it and apply immediately to your own company. For example, you couldn't do exactly what Mark Zuckerberg did every single step and get Facebook, because a lot of it's just the right time, knowing the right people. You just wouldn't have the same product. You could, however, make sure that you didn't make his mistakes. That if he did something wrong, that's probably something that if it didn't work for him, it probably won't work for you. And so it's a lot more immediately relevant to what you're working on to hear someone discuss their failures. And so from that, we spun off FailCon in 2009, as you mentioned. It was produced in San Francisco for the first 4 years, and we continue to produce it here. And now it's spun off. I think we did 6 cities in 2012, and we're looking at about a dozen in 2013. So, in a somewhat longish nutshell, that is my history getting into events.
Wow, that's really great. I know. I thought he moved to Minnesota or something.
He did. So it was Minnesota and then Boston, and now
Uh,
it is Portland,
oh,
Oregon.
really? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a real nice guy. I totally just had lunch with him the one time, and we went to that gratitude place in Berkeley. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Vegetarian place. It was really great. And then I was thinking too, so you started out as a stage manager.
I did.
Yeah, and in the corporate world, that pays very well.
Oh, I'm sure in the
Just FYI, if you ever needed to do some freelance gigs, calling some shows or something. Amazing. Anyway, sorry. I know you don't want to do that because you're very successful in what you're doing.
yeah.
So where'd the name Web Wallflower Events come from?
Sure. So what actually was people frequently commented on just, how extroverted the community is, and you need to be an extrovert to get out there, to be a networker. And my whole life, I've been an introvert. I don't define an introvert as someone who is shy, but I define an introvert as someone who loses energy in a crowd, as an extrovert as someone who gains energy in a crowd. It doesn't mean that the extrovert is necessarily super, super social, nor does it mean that the introvert is shy or reserved. Um, so I think it's a slightly better definition of the two terms. By that definition, I'm definitely an introvert. I was shy until essentially I started doing events, when I realized that you can't get ahead in the corporate world being shy. It's really, really hard. So you need to kind of toughen up, stick it out, do the networking thing, and get it done. But I liked actually speaking out about that, and being kind of representative of the introverts in our community. That there are people who don't want to go to 6 parties with you, and it's not because they don't like you. It's just that by the end of party number one, they're really tired. A lot of work to socialize. And so the Web Wallflower kind of became a little bit of a spin-off on that. I thought it sounded really neat. I liked the alliteration. But essentially representing wallflowers, people who are introverts on the web, and helping them kind of get a little bit ahead through the way events are structured, through how you create that networking experience, because extroverts don't need help networking. Introverts definitely do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I'm terrified of speaking in front of people, but I have to go do these sessions sometimes, and I just hate it. And then I don't I get tired too. That's funny you say that. It's a really great analogy and a great name for your company.
Yeah, and it is a little bit funny because people do comment that, well, do I really want an event that has a bunch of wallflowers at it? And it's like, well, if you're thinking that way, maybe you actually do. Like maybe you should learn kind of what wallflowers bring to the experience.
Yeah, and there's such a big push to get interactive with the audience. I mean, you guys do a good job with FailCon and like at lunchtime, putting everybody into groups to talk, and I that was part of it too. That I'm not a startup person. Well, I have a startup, but it's not like I have a job too. But then I have this startup. But it was just neat to be able to around other people that I could talk to about it. And I was kind of forced into it during lunch because I kind of sat by myself there, and then I was like pushed in, so it was great.
Help. But introverts need those lunch meetings, and they need those kind of structured things to help them get the most out of the event. And so I
Yeah,
certainly leave during lunch. But I like to have something there where someone like me would feel better sitting down with these people.
yeah, I agree. I agree. So one of the things I love about the FailCon is once I went to the first one, I was in your kind of I want to say web of how you communicate with your audience. Like I would get emails, but they were not just emails. And I struggle with this with my company is like sending out newsletters that are actually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have a really good system that how you stay in touch with your audience.
Oh, thank you.
With your newsletter. Do you want to talk a little bit about your newsletter And I don't know if you have more than one, because I just get the one with the calendar stuff on it.
Um, we're thinking about branching it off to some of our other cities where we've been doing PhilCon.
Uh-huh.
But right now it is just San Francisco. It's not really a paying position, so it's really just kind of me.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of why it only stays in San Francisco. 2 years ago, also probably back in like 2008. And it was a response, like you said, to my feeling like I kept writing these completely irrelevant emails. And I've noticed people do it often with their events. People have this event brand, and once every 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, you get an email that's all just about their event and what they're working on for their event and the news are for their event. And it's kind of like, I don't remember who you are. I don't remember if I even went to this event and why I'm on your newsletter. And I don't know why this event might be relevant to me now. So I'm just going to delete your email because I have a lot of emails to read. And so years ago, I wanted to get over that by making a reason to send an email every week or every other week, to make a pretty regular email that wasn't just me repeating everything else that's going on in my life. And so that's when we get this idea to put every other startup event that we knew about, essentially every competitor to our event, put them all in this newsletter. And so it started off weekly, where every week we'd send out all the events, all the conferences. And specifically what we'd do is we'd go to them and ask for discounts. We'd say, hey, can we get a discount to all of SF Beta's attendees? Can we get a discount to all of PhilCon attendees? The list now has grown to about 6,000 San Francisco readers. And so now it's more that events will come to me and give discounts. And so it's every other week now we send out this newsletter of kind of all the upcoming events that are relevant to the PhilCon audience, and discounts that we've received to all of them. And this is great because it means that when PhilCon is coming and I want to send just PhilCon promotional emails, they get a pretty high open rate. And we have a larger audience that receives them, rather than if we just sent them once or twice a year and the audience wasn't growing at all.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And I've been struggling with that for such a long time about how to do something. And you have a really good niche for you're really concentrated on your audience. And I think a lot of people have that problem of kind of branching out and trying to get everyone to try and, what is it, shotgun it out to everybody and hope people like it.
Yeah, I think what helps in what I'm doing is a lot of people try and do blog posts, like what are relevant blog posts I found, which involve just way too much research. What's great about this is at this point, people just email me events to put in. And so the work itself is very, very quick.
That is very, very, it's brilliant. How do you manage your email list? I mean, what do you use to do it?
An online mailing program.
Yeah.
People can sign up through my website, or they can email me to sign up. Whenever we do an event, that list gets added to the newsletter list, and then we just use MailChimp as a management software.
Nice. Yeah, that's what we use too. That's a great one. I don't know if the listeners know that, but that is a real great, because it's free for how many? I mean, how many users? I can't remember how many emails.
And then just because I focus on startups, they'll also give me some reduced rates if I help get new users there, or if I promote in my newsletter. So they work really closely with a lot of people, and they have a lot of deals always running.
And so along with these discounts, those are affiliate links too. So you make a little money off those, don't you?
Some of them I do, yeah. That's actually never what I push for. Most of the money I'll make is from the very first paragraph. I'll include one advertisement in it. So you're kind of like how Haro does it. They'll do an exclusive advertisement of the newsletter. And I'll sell that each week to either someone doing an event that they want to get a very special focus on, or a startup product that's being launched that people want the community to know about. But it'll just be one advertisement per email. So that's actually where most of the profit for those emails comes from.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's a great way of making a little money on doing this stuff. It's okay. And I think a lot of event producers and people putting on events think sometimes that's bad. I don't know why, but it's great. It's a great learning experience to be able to you're giving something to your audience. You should be able to get something back for your time.
And I actually frequently think I undercharge for it, for the size of the mailing list and how targeted it is. But it's also that most of the people who reach out to me are people like, they support my event. So for me, it's more as, can I at least recover the cost of my MailChimp subscription and the 4 hours I spend on it? So it's like, let's say I charge, $75 an hour, $100 an hour, and I have my $50 MailChimp subscription. Can I get $450 a month for doing this newsletter. Yes, right. It's, worth my time.